Hi everyone, we're going to be starting the webinar. So first of all, let me welcome you all from Barcelona. It's sunny and great outside. And we are here with a very distinguished panel of speakers. We're going to be talking on the topic, opportunities and challenges in Incubator-Corporation partnership. We're going to have in this webinar 3 speakers. We call them incubation superstars because they are representing 3 of the most promising incubation programs out there. So we're going to have Simon Bond from SETSquared UK. We're going to have Abdullah Snobar from DMZ in Canada. And we're going to have Hattan Ahmed from KAUST in Saudi Arabia. But before we go to our speakers, let me tell you briefly about UBI, what we guys have been doing. Many of you already know what UBI does, but to give you in a very short brief, what UBI is all about. UBI conducts the biggest benchmark of business incubators globally. We want to know which the best incubators in the world are. We want to know what are the good things that they are doing, and more interestingly, we want to share those best practices with all of you, and that's why the idea of this webinar. Then coming to the topic itself, why are we talking about opportunities and challenges in Incubator-Corporation partnership? On this topic, when we speak to corporations and when we speak to incubators, we realize that there is a natural win-win partnership there. Incubators have a lot to offer to corporations, and corporations have a lot to offer to incubators. So the partnership in itself seems like a great win-win. However, as any partnership, there are challenges, there are great things to explore, and hence the idea of doing this webinar, where we want to put in first the perspective, from the incubator side. What are the challenges in such a partnership? What can be achieved if it is done effectively? And that's what we want to bring to forefront in this first of 2 webinar series. The first webinar today will focus on the incubator perspective. From the incubator perspective, what are the challenges they are facing, when they want to work with corporations? How are they feeling? How are they thinking to contribute to those corporations? And we have 3 of the top incubator managers who will put their perspective on that today. And in the second part of this webinar, which will happen in the next month, we will have the corporate perspective. So with that said, we want to get into the topic of the opportunities and challenges in Incubator-Corporation partnership. And I want to invite our first speaker, and I see Simon is already there. Hey Simon, welcome to the webinar. And with this said, I'm going to hand it over to Simon and take it away. Please note that all the speakers have 15 minutes during their presentations. And at the end of it, we have a Q&A section or session where it's going to be open for all of you to ask your questions. And if you feel that you still have some questions left, we can always come back to you with responses to those questions with the experts that you will hear today. With that said, let me welcome Simon again and hand it over to him with his presentation.
That's marvelous. Thank you very much, Dhruv, and it's good to see everybody there. This is a very opportune time to be talking about the opportunities and challenges of partnerships with corporations from SETSquared's point of view. And as I was preparing for the webinar, I was busily writing notes of things that are unfolding in real time. And Dhruv, you really did put your finger on the button there when you said that there are fantastic opportunities, but it is challenging for a university business incubator as well. So what I've got is 5 short slides just to prompt me through. I'll just talk you through the SETSquared experience in this area, and obviously I hope to have a chance to deal with questions and looking forward to conversations with participants in this webinar. So first up, I am going to apologize for our completely shameless and very un-British celebration of our global #1 ranking by UBI Global. I say it's not the usual British reticence, but we're incredibly proud of this ranking. We're very, very proud to be part of a global family of university business incubators, and you know, you can see the #1 hashtags and everything all over our literature and our presentation since the announcement last November. And you know, what we believe is that this is an excellent vehicle where we can all share best practice. And why I was particularly pleased to participate in this webinar is because we want to, we want to help the University Business Incubator that's going to be #1 next. That would be a great role for this UBI Global family to achieve, and by honestly sharing the opportunities and challenges that we all face as University Business Incubators, we can all help each other get better for the benefit of our ecosystems, value to our clients, and the attractiveness of what we offer. So that's my reason why we're a little bit shameless in our branding. Let me just talk briefly about SETSquared. The context is important for the purpose of me being able to explain how we see corporate partnerships. So SETSquared is a university business incubation system that traverses 5 research-intensive universities in the south of England. Those universities have a research budget of, I guess it's about £1 billion research portfolio, and that obviously creates a large number of opportunities for commercialization that feed into our incubators. But our incubators are not limited to just businesses from the research base of the university. We also welcome startups, tech startups from our student community as well, particularly our graduate students, so the PhD students, master's students are a very important source of entrepreneurial talent for us. And so is the community. The economic region, the south of England, is also a great source of entrepreneurial talent for our incubators. In fact, it's the largest source of startups that join the incubator. And so we see that there is usually a great concentration of tech entrepreneurs that tend to cluster around universities, although they may not be professors or students or formally linked to the university. They're kind of part of our wider ecosystem. And we measure a bunch of things over the last 13, nearly 14 years of our existence. The amount of money that's invested in the companies that we support, the startups, is critical. So over £1 billion in over 1,000 companies. But 2015, you know, keeping it up to date, it was a really good year for SETSquared. Actually, the companies raised £90 million, substantially in equity investment. There was a decent sum of grant funding in there as well. And we also measure the effect that our member companies have on our economy. So you can see in this chart here, we talk about the number of jobs created, the amount of economic impact that those companies go on to achieve. And you know, critical here in terms of sharing insights and practices of university business incubators, we measure that 3.8 billion economic impact is the impact of our companies, not of SETSquared itself. It's what our companies go on and achieve. The people who measure these sorts of things, economists, will say, well, some of this could be achieved if SETSquared never existed, but you know, the point is, what is the economic impact of our members? And that's a number that we communicate quite extensively to government. For the purpose of this presentation, I'll just also point to this network, the 10,000 with the 10,000 members of the SETSquared network, our database. That's a mighty beast and has been accumulated over the years, refined as we've helped to create more and more startups and get more people clustered around us. It includes founders, investors, and it does include a lot of corporate executives as well. Moving on, I'll just kind of explain where SETSquared sees itself, its role, and it's at the very, very early stages. You know, we deal with complicated, sophisticated tech startups. Our universities and the people that cluster around them are research and science, engineering and technology. They're kind of the pointy head end of the spectrum there. And so we specialize in helping those technologists, those scientists, those engineers to articulate their business ideas as investable business stage propositions. And we do that at the early stage, so really from seed to A round. And if you look at the SETSquared website and our case studies, we do talk about some of the big raising companies. I mean, recently, I guess we've had Zeta Networks, Zinstra raising double-digit millions of pounds of equity investment. Ultra Haptics raised just over £10 million. And we do talk about these because they're the exception. Most SETSquared members that are successful raise about $1 million in a membership period with SETSquared of about 30 months. So we operate at the very, very early ends of the game, which we think is a really appropriate role for a university business incubator. And this does have some bearing on the way that we deal with corporates, as I'll go on to in a second. What we do in that move of taking early naissance entrepreneurial talent from the bottom left-hand side of the slide, through our networks and on-campus, off-campus contacts, we develop research talent into innovators. We have a program called iCure that helps to rapidly test research that we think is commercializable with companies. We have an entrepreneurship program that then helps those teams to articulate the business proposition, the model as an investment proposition. We have incubators, and then we have a large number of investor showcases. Those logos up there, Discovering Startups, Pitch to the Palace, Massachusetts Center for Technology Transfer. These are our networks where we're able to position startup companies in front of equity investors to achieve investment events. And we're just doing some work on this. We're counting up. We've got just over 100 invest slots across those partnerships there that we can direct our membership at. And we have at any time 250 member companies. So there's plenty of opportunities to match the right kind of investors with the right kind of investment opportunities. And then the last little box at the top right hand there is our Open Innovation Program, which was founded not so long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and really at a time just after the financial crisis in 2010, 2011, when really the equity investment market was looking pretty tough, pretty poor, and we needed to find alternative sources. So we started presenting our members to corporates, particularly to corporate innovation departments and corporate venture capital companies. And this is where we've really got into the business of dealing with the opportunities and challenges of working with corporates as an early stage incubator. And so my final slide is probably to say that our experience is that the corporate market is very, very granular. There is a lot of nuances and differences that are critical to having a good and meaningful relationship with corporates. So I would say in the early days of SETSquared, back in the early 2000s, and still is the case with professional service providers, the lawyers, the accountants and so forth, corporate relationships are really important because they provide sponsorship. They just provide hard cash in return for privileged access to our members, the ability to run drop-ins or clinics with them, to advise them on structuring tax affairs or company M&A memorandum of articles of memorandum, because that's good business for them. But beyond that, we have other relationships with organizations. So that bottom block there, National Health Service, Schlumberger, Google, and the Launchpad, these corporates have partnered with SETSquared because they're interested in investing in research and development at the universities that could be accelerated to be taken into their product portfolio, their service portfolio, or accelerated to become a potential startup. So actually for our early stage, our pre-seed level activity, presentation of opportunities, particularly entrepreneurs to these groups, is pretty useful. But they are a distinct group. Schlumberger, very interesting the way it operates. It has a ventures group and a research division as well, and they hunt together, and they look to spot very early stage opportunities that can be distorted and moved over from the market they're currently addressing to an oil and gas need that Schlumberger sees. So this kind of early stage intervention of those kinds of corporates is quite useful for our kind of incubation system. The next stage there, where I've got the UK Space Agency and AstraZeneca, two quite different organizations. Both of those have spent money with SETSquared to run training programs that are provided to SETSquared members and entrepreneurs. UK Space Agency is interested in investing to encourage entrepreneurs to design startup businesses that utilize downstream satellite data, and they're willing to spend money with us, and we're able to identify actually quite a lot of mobile orientated startups who can be persuaded to develop their businesses along this line. So that's a good engagement for us. And the UK Space Agency also has a large number of corporate relationships with primes, and they're able to broker relationships on our behalf with the startups that are beneficiaries of these training programs that we offer. AstraZeneca is slightly different, but it's still, we can monetize it as a university business incubator, and that is they're looking to provide their executives with an entrepreneurial experience and work alongside startups. And they'll pay for this program, and the onus is on SETSquared to find the startup companies and select them, help them to work in a training program alongside the AstraZeneca executives. It's great exposure for the startups, very useful for AstraZeneca's team as well. The IP issues and confidentiality issues are quite tortuous there, but it is monetizable and therefore very useful to running a university business incubator. Just to finish up, I'll talk about this last category of corporate relationships, where I have Barclays, the bank, Sony, Huawei, CGI. I think this is the nirvana, you know, what we all look for with corporate relations. If we could present our companies to these corporates, they identify an investment opportunity, a purchase opportunity. Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? And it does happen. We ran an open innovation program with Barclays about 2 years ago, and a company, SETSquared company called Verisant, which has got an advanced material that can be used for cooling in data centers. Barclays saw that company there, they piloted the product, and they're now rolling it out in an extended test in their data center. So absolutely living the dream there. Very, very good tie-up. And we have others. Ubiquitous, one of our sort of star companies, was bought ultimately by Cisco, and so on. The majority of the times, though, when we get the brief from large corporates that are looking to make investments by purchase order or acquisition, SETSquared companies are too early stage for them, and the cost of administering and dealing with those inquiries in terms of our executive time is relatively onerous, and so our learning from this is that we have to choose very carefully. The companies that I've got up there on my chart are high quality partners. They do business with relatively early stage technologies and companies, and are therefore worth SETSquared treating as investors in our portfolio of companies, and worth the time put into them. Other corporates, perhaps tier 2 corporates, where they're just kind of reviewing the innovation ecosystem, we can't make that work for us so well, and so we don't tend to select them to be partners of the SETSquared University Business Incubator. So just to sum up, we do see these 3 layers, 4 layers if you include the professional service provider companies, as quite distinctive and requiring quite distinctive treatment by the University Business Incubator. I'll finish there.
Thank you, Simon. First of all, very impressive impact numbers. That was really, really great. And thank you also for pointing out, the main interest that corporations have with the accelerated R&D with SETSquared. Thanks for the insights. I think we're going to have great questions towards the end. And with this, I'm going to invite the second speaker to introduce, and that's Abdullah from DMZ in Canada. And again, I think the most interesting questions that we all been hearing, when it comes to this topic, why this collaboration makes sense. What are the challenges that are in this collaboration, and what are some of the innovative solutions that you see in this collaboration? And I'm sure that Abdullah, handing it over to you, you're going to point out, some of those for us.
So, hello everybody. Abdullah Snobar here with you from downtown Toronto, Canada. I'm the executive director of the DMZ, which is Canada's largest technology incubator, supporting over 450 people and currently about 83 companies. And excited to be speaking to you on the opportunities of why corporate partnerships make sense and what the challenges actually are and that present themselves typically with these kind of relationships. So on that note, just maybe a quick overview of DMZ and what we do. We are part of a university called Ryerson University, which is a large university in downtown Toronto, housing over 40,000 students. But the DMZ in itself is open to everyone, students and non-students alike. We have helped incubate over 230 startups, supported over 160 alumni within the community. Within terms of job creation, we've helped create over 2,100 jobs, and we have helped companies raise over $140 million in a few years since inception. Moving on from there, we've been able to actually build a strong network that's supporting the university, the city, and the country. So the DMZ is the flagship, if you will, but we also have 9 other zones within our network, everything from biomedical to fashion to urban energy, down to transmedia, to design fabrication, to social ventures. So very much part of our DNA and who we are, and we're very proud of that. Of course, very happy to be part of the UBI Global ranking as well. This past 2015, this past year, actually, we ranked #1 in North America, #3 in the world, a ranking that we are all very, very proud about, and very happy to see Canada doing some wonderful things. I got to show you a picture because sometimes people don't believe when I tell them this is where we live. So this is downtown Toronto. It's a beautiful, thriving, energetic, and lively city. We're actually located where that big green sign is, which is a phenomenal location because it gives us access to the community, and that includes customers, that includes investors, that includes other startup spaces, that also includes just people in general that are looking to better kind of position themselves in an innovation ecosystem. So we're very proud of where we are centrally located in the country, and obviously being in Toronto, we are in very close proximity to many other cities, including New York, Boston, San Francisco. So moving on from there, I want to make sure that I get time to speak about the incubator corporate partnerships, opportunities and challenges. And we've had a few great case studies that I'm actually quite excited to share with you today. So first and foremost, some of the advantages of having corporate partnerships for incubators in particular is, of course, the contacts and networks. These go without saying. Typically, when you're bringing on larger corporations to become partners of your incubation space, they are going to be bringing with them their large and vast Rolodex that they can share with you, hopefully. And that's really in the focus and in the spirit of having good partners. And I'll speak to how we've done this with Deloitte, how we've done this with IBM as well. But really the contacts is essential because you're in a space where you have many other startups who are in need of these connections and customer acquisition potential. So this is really a great way to kind of connect back and have the corporate innovation partnerships. Another thing really is around tailored support for startups as well. So really, corporations are able to help build specialized solutions for the market that they're actually working within. So companies can come and understand the pain points, understand the gaps that are actually happening within the startup community, and not trying to leverage it in a bad way, but rather try to build out customized approaches and support mechanisms that would really help elevate the startups within your space through customized, discounted kind of programs that would help them grow quickly. Next part is just-in-time learning models. So we've seen a lot of this opportunities where our companies who are coming in are really supporting and mentoring the startups in the space. And needless to say, it's extremely valuable and obviously comes highly regarded, again, with the right people in place and positioning themselves in a method that would really create value for the startups as well. And then really it's a lot of it's around needs-driven partnerships. So we're really seeing this as the ability to bring on partnerships that our startups are asking for. And I'll give you an example of this. We've recently been working with a larger company that we brought on called Intuit, and they've helped us build out a program that our startups actually needed right now, which is the bookkeeper in residence program. And this is really something that our startups saw tremendous value in. We're very happy to have partnered with a corporate partner to bring this program in. Otherwise, I'll be honest, it would have been very difficult for us to do this alone, freestanding. So having these kind of partners to build out the really value-added partnerships is something that's of value to both sides. The other part is really around the ability to attract high potential startups. Startups typically want to be in a space where it's first class, lots of good connections, lots of good value, and strong names and brands associated to it. So as long as you're doing it in all the right ways and for all the right reasons, typically it does attract a stronger pipeline of startups who are wanting to come in and being associated back to a stronger brand. And of course, it goes without saying, and this should never be your primary, but it is an extremely big benefit when you're able to generate revenue from corporate partnerships and having corporations in the space, because what it does actually allows you to do more within your own space. So we look at this as being of great value and something that, it's the reality of things. So on that note, for corporations, and the reason why it's extremely beneficial for corporations to be part of, to have partnerships with incubator spaces like the DMZ, is the opportunity to connect to startups. So imagine being in one of the best spaces and the most energetic, high potential, most driven environments every single day. And this is one of the big reasons why companies and corporations want to be in a space like the DMZ. As much as they try to build it on their own, it will never be the same. You don't have the culture for it. There's no environment for it. Where you can find this is really very much in a space where it's grassroots. You have 450 to 500 people who are here with the common denominator that they're all entrepreneurs, or they're all heavy risk takers, and they're all very driven. So this is some sort of energy that's in the space that corporations love to be around and connected to. And I actually see the value in that very much, rather than having companies open up their own space. That leads into the next point, which is around unique environment component, and it really does actually set the tone in terms of the changes in the sectors and where and how you incentivize new employees. And we've been seeing it quite a bit now. Companies that do come in to the DMZ and actually become partners with us are incentivizing and creating programs for their employees that if they meet a certain threshold within the current space that they're in, they'll get a chance to be the ones to come into the DMZ and live here for a few months to a year. So it's becoming an incentive model, which is actually quite interesting, and obviously makes us very proud because we're leading the way in terms of building out culture in an environment that's conducive for creativity and success. Of course, for corporations, it's also important because they get a chance to see the latest tech trends in the community, in the world. They understand what's coming up, what's being disruptive, what's really changing, maybe potentially their vertical and their cluster. So it's really important to have a tie back into the environment where they're adding value, but they're also learning about what's up and coming, and maybe potentially having the first right or the first access to these kind of technologies to be able to acquire some of them or to be able to invest into some of them as well. And of course, it goes without saying, for corporations, they want to be tied back and associated to some of the top spaces globally. And for the DMZ being ranked #3 in the world and #1 in North America, it goes without saying, but it's easy for companies to want to associate themselves back to us. And we're very proud of that as well, and something that that we've seen quite a bit of interest in over the past little while. So we're excited, and we've seen a lot more happening, and we're excited to see what's going to come in the future. Some of the key challenges that I think are going to be inevitable and should be discussed really upfront to make sure that whatever you're doing and the reason why you're doing it is all for the right reasons. Is number one is misalignment of priorities. So I think this one can actually be completely very dangerous for an organization the minute you start looking at corporate partnerships in the sense of profit rather than in the sense of serving your startups. So you need to make sure that you understand the core mandate of why you exist as an actual incubator. And for us, it's about our startups. So if there's going to be a relationship that's going to be made with zero benefit to our startups, likely that won't go through. We have to understand the value add. We have to understand what they bring to the table. We have to understand what we bring to the table. And from there, we can shift our, build out the priorities together to ensure that the expectations are set from the get-go. So that's number one. Number two is being able to find the right fit. Don't ever underestimate how exhausting this could actually be. You will likely get a lot more companies wanting to be part of your community than not. But on that note, it's okay to say no, and it's okay to make sure that you're selective in who you're bringing on, because it can get extremely messy the minute you start bringing companies in who start influencing your culture, the way that you're doing business, the way that you're actually allowing a free flow of an innovation ecosystem to thrive. So you want to be careful on what you're letting in and why you're letting them in as well. So fit is extremely important in this context. You also want to make sure that companies coming through are not looking only to build a pipeline of good technology. You need to make sure whoever's coming in has to be a contributing community member, giving back all the time, and they're supporting not only the incubator in itself, but also the startups, the programs, and the community at large. And they also have to be good members of the community in terms of supporting what's happening in the space, but also what's happening outside the space. So when people are coming in and they're looking just to build out a pipeline of opportunities for tech incubators, it can get very dangerous, and it can actually take away from the value add of the space for both you, but also for the startup themselves, and that can actually deteriorate from the reputation that you might have already been building out. And the other stuff is really around the liability component, but I think focusing more on that is going to be the culture part. That you don't want to divert and take away from the culture component when you're actually bringing on these partnerships, and that could be an actual challenge. The minute you surround the same number of startups with the same number of corporations, you got to be careful with what that could do to the culture that you've been building out for so long. We have set a limit and a threshold of how many corporate partnerships we can have that physically live in the space with us, and that's very important because it can get very busy very quickly, and the money can get very attractive. And the minute you have as many startups as you do corporations, you're going to probably be in big trouble. The other part as well is around the ability to dig through and dig deep into what companies tell you is the best possible thing for your startups. So we get contacted all the time and asked to build out some partnerships with specific companies because they are looking out for the best interest of our startups, and they have built out quote unquote the best packages and most attractive deals for our companies. You got to be able to dig through that and understand what that really means, because that can get very everybody has the best interest of your startups at mind, or so they say. You have to really be able to understand what the current needs are, what the current challenges are, what the real demands are within the space, and base your partnerships and your alignments off of that, rather than taking every single person's word verbatim or taking it as is, because that can really lead to a lot of struggles in terms of delivering on programs or packages or services that either A, are not reasonable in terms of pricing and cost and everything else for your startups, but B, they're just not needed. So you're wasting time and energy on a specific partnership that really won't deliver on much for your startups. So moving on from there, I want to talk about a couple of our successful case studies that we actually have in the space, and we've been very fortunate to see what what we've been able to deliver on over the past years, and we've had quite a bit of interest even moving after that, and we're excited to kind of continue building these strong partnerships with our very active and value-add partners that I presented in front of you here today. One of them being Ryerson Futures Inc., which is a leading, which is our for-profit entity within the space. They are a venture arm as well, and they lead a lot of the enterprise programming that we have for the DMZ. But they've been able to build up some really cool programs, one of which is Innovation for Hire program, working with the university, with talent around the DMZ, and being able to build out custom-made solutions for corporations. And that program in itself has really attracted a lot of attention in the sense that companies all have challenges and problems. Typically working with the startup community, or a startup for that matter, allows them to do it cheaper, faster, and better. And these are things that the Ryerson Futures Inc. is able to provide alongside many other resources, but also access to talent in general, from a university down to the startup community. Another example that we have is things like IBM Bluemix Garage, which is their app development platform that they house here, and they're actually currently living with us in this space. And this is a great partnership for a magnitude of reasons. But first and foremost, they are an international brand. They're very well recognized. They have we've been able to develop a great partnership with them. And what they do is they bring in a lot of clients on a weekly basis, and these clients were able to share. So if they're going to bring in a client for a week, after that week, for a day, my apologies, we would take their clients for a part of that day, showcase our startups to these clients, and ensure that they know what kind of talent and innovation and technologies we have within the space that they might be able to get some use from. And that's really created for great synergies and partnership. We've also seen the opportunity around working with them in terms of global expansions, global partnerships, global reach, but also having them in the space is not only good in terms of getting our startups to access their resources and their tools, but also having our startups access them as mentors and advisors, which is phenomenal. And for us, of course, we're giving them access to a space that's keeping them motivated, keeping them young, but also when they're bringing in their clients, they're able to associate to a leading business incubator, but also a thriving community that they would have a difficult time finding anywhere else. With things like Deloitte, we built out what we call the Corporate Innovation Program, having Deloitte come into the space, physically living out of here as well, and bringing in maybe some teams and specific practices, so audit or tax, and they hire these people through an incentivized program from Deloitte, and they put them in a space. And what ends up coming out of this is disruptive technologies within those specific areas, like tax and audit, that they are able to take, white label, and push out back to all the other larger firms, if you will. So these are things that we've seen as great case studies and great models. We've also partnered up with large Canadian telecom and banks to help us run competitions and programs to build out our pipeline, but also to build out a brand for ourselves in a strong way that would attract the top talent within the country and possibly even around the globe. So Rogers Communications Inc. is the largest and biggest telecom business company in the country, but they're also they own large parts of almost every single sport team in the country as well, and primarily in Toronto. They helped us with a generous amount to build out a competition called the Next Big Idea in Sports, and that competition in itself has actually led the DMZ to having the largest number of sports innovation startups than anywhere else in North America right now. So these are the kind of competitions that are helping us build a stronger community of talented people in a specific vertical, and obviously it adds value back to them because they're getting access and they're getting to see what's happening, and they're getting to really connect back to the sports innovation community. And for us, of course, we get to help build the next big thing in terms of the vertical that we're working with. So we've taken that model and we've actually duplicated it down to the fintech sector, and we're working with one of the largest banks called BMO, and we're building out a fintech program that will be attracting some of the top-notch financial technology businesses and startups in the country to come to the DMZ through a program that they will support. They will provide mentors and advisors. They will provide access to resources, and of course, we'll provide everything that we do from space to mentors and advisors as well, to the programming itself, and to connections back to customers and investors. So these are all excellent examples of how we've worked with the community and some case studies there. And we've been very grateful in the sense that we have had extremely good partnerships, and that's primarily because we have an extremely rigorous process in who we actually accept to partner with. And that's maybe one of the key parts to understand from today, is that whoever you do end up partnering with, ensure that it's for all the right reasons. It's going to be supporting the core mandate of why you exist, which for us is our startups. And if there's value there, you really want to make sure that you set the expectations and you drive it forward. If there's no value, it's probably okay to understand that it's to say no is probably best than to say yes. So I'll leave it there, and that's really the talk in terms of the DMZ and our partnerships with corporations, and some of the good and obviously some of the challenges that we have to face. So thank you very much. I know I won't be able to take questions right now, but I'm happy to be reached at any time by our partner incubators at my email, asnobar@ryerson.ca. Thank you.
With this said, I'm going to invite Hattan. Hattan, again, the same questions to you. Why the collaboration between incubator and incubators and corporations makes sense? What are the challenges that you've been facing there, and what are some of the most innovative solutions? With that said, I'm handing it over to you. Please take it away. You have 15 minutes to present your presentation.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. This is Hattan. I'm calling here. I'm joining in from the shores of the Red Sea at KAUST. So in here at KAUST, stands for King Abdullah University for Science and Technology. I'm here representing the Entrepreneurship Center at KAUST, and we are part of emerging university that has been launched in 2009. So we're young university, but highly focused R&D university. We're relatively small, and we are halfway through reaching out our full capacity. So as KAUST, it's really focused on R&D with 3 academic divisions focusing on science and technology, but also empowered by 9 core labs and 10 research centers. The main 4 thrusts of the university is basically water, energy, environment, and food. And it's here it's located at the shores of the Red Sea. And one of the unique things of it is that we do have the Red Sea Research Center, which is the only research center that is studying the Red Sea biofuels. But at the same time, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is really emerging in Saudi Arabia. So there is a lot of activities over the past few years with the oil prices pumping and so on, and the need for diversification of the economy. So let me dive into deeply directly to what we do at the Entrepreneurship Center. So we're relatively young in terms of the university foundation, but also at the Entrepreneurship Center. So the Entrepreneurship Center has been there for around 5 years, and it's still evolving over time. But the current team is here for the past 2 years. So our activities evolve around 3 main areas. The main one is embedding the culture change. And we do different activities to embed and change the culture towards entrepreneurial initiatives and trials. At the same time, we try to build a startup pipeline, and with that, we have different programs run. One is the Open Accelerator that serves wide range of different startup initiatives, starting from a social enterprise to high-tech based startups. And from there, where we focus, we found a niche to develop IP or intellectual property technology focused program. We called it Hikmah, which means wisdom in Arabic, based on KAUST's vision to be House of Wisdom in the region. And recently, we just launched Takamul Accelerator, which is a third party that we're running and funded by third party that is a subsidiary owned by the government, the Ministry of Labor, to address their needs in terms of creating jobs. We were just done with the boot camp of the program the day before yesterday, and now we got the teams camped into our space in order to build this startup. And those startups, they are focused around the needs of the local market with different industries focus. The other element that we do provide is expanding the knowledge, and from there we have two main components which evolved in our center. One is the Innovation Academy, and in the Innovation Academy, basically we develop a program designed for corporates. So, and this has evolved over time. So from the previous cohorts, we had some cases where we got corporates joining our accelerator program, and the results were really interesting. So they were keen to implement this into their corporate, and they wanted to engage more and so on. Then what we decided on to develop a program that serves them specifically. And within KAUST, we have the R&D component, which is the research excellence and the academic excellence that KAUST is after, but also we have innovation and economic development arm that consists of different departments, one of which is the Entrepreneurship Center, and we get an innovation fund that is funding seed fund and early stage fund, but also we get industrial engagement office, and in that office what we try to do is to have membership of different industry players for multiple reasons, to network and leverage the research, push it to the market, but also for sponsored research. So, and it's been working out really great. But also we do in-house corporate training, so where we develop customized programs for the corporates in order to address their needs and promote innovation within their organization. And the last bit of expanding the knowledge is the educational component by introducing different programs to KAUST crowd and community, and also to our students. And usually we run it off the hours in order to deliver the service for them, since they have full-time commitments within their day job. So this is about the accelerator program. During those programs, we use the standard tools of the business model canvas, which we adapted to our needs and for our corporate use. But also we use design thinking methodologies. But not only that, but we created our own tool, which is we called it TechNav, and the main objective of the tool is to address the need for startups to assess and measure towards the market. And the main objective is that to locate where the position is, and then assess how far they are from the market. We tested this with the different cohorts we run with, and usually they overestimate their relative position to the market. So once we go through the tool, it will give them really good assessment for their position. Here is another picture for the tool, and with the tool, it's a little bit gamified, and it comes with a deck of cards, and in those cards we ask questions, and if the questions are yes, then they move to the next station. If not, then they need to work on actions. It's really interactive, and we get the mentors engaged with the process to help the technology inventors to measure and assess their technology location. So it supplements the business model canvas, and it focuses only in the technology assessment. And here is a small demo of what we try to do with Hikmah, which is it's more like the IQ program in in SETSquared in the UK and NSF ICO program, we try to use the business model canvas and also we get engaged different universities, not only KAUST, but also adjacent universities in the region. We do our own created tools, and the process is mentor-led. We try to blend all this together to come up with highest impact. And along the line, we get the industrial engagement office engaged in terms of the introduction to the market, or experimenting prototype, or piloting for their project, or even funding for the project. In October last year, we held the first UBI Conference in KAUST, and this is a picture. I'm sure you know the guy in the picture. He's joining us here in the crowd, and it was really great event in order to disseminate the methodologies and the procedures that we use into our programs, and in terms to measure the KPIs into it. So it's really curriculum component introduction to the corporate learning and to promote the innovation into it. And let me run a short video to introduce to you Regulate program and what we refer to it. And what we really found out, there is really great synergy that comes in to learn more about what's happening in our end in terms of the startups, in the terms of the startup scene, but also at the same time having them embedding new ideas and innovative technologies into their companies.
I'm a big believer in the idea that once you start at your idea, it will succeed. Most people just don't start the process to actually get it done. And that's what it is, start the process.
What you want to do is create something that's sustainable over time.
Revelate is for product managers, for marketing people, for finance. It's for anyone in an organization that wants to make a change, make a difference, try something new.
I know from my background and my career, the best ideas come from having that cross-industry collaboration. This is a practical, hands-on program that focuses on real problems, real opportunities that companies have.
When I arrived in KAUST, I was very impressed with the quality of the ideas. I think they're more innovative than ideas I've seen in other universities around the world.
When I think about KAUST, I think about science, technology, and innovation. And frankly, that's what's going to drive the world. So you've got corporations typically who are established already. They have set ways of doing things.
So the workshop helps them understand the process of customer discovery, how to put together a business plan, where the sources of income would be, and how to calculate their costs, what the value proposition of this new process or new product would be.
Yes, our products are different, our services are different, but the principles remain the same. So it gets you back to basics and gets you to rethink some of the basic fundamentals.
You will end up with a valid business model that really fits the market and fits the customer needs.
It takes you through the process of moving your idea into actually a pitch that you can go and get the buy-in, and then you can move forward.
What we've done is we've gone out of our comfort zone and we've taken people from other key departments who we felt are important for having a sustainable corporate performance management culture within the bank. And for the first time in a long time, discussing key issues that are relevant to performance. I think that is the biggest win out of these 3 days.
Ideally, they'd gone out of this with an amazing new product, new service that they didn't have when they came in. I want them to come out of this with a toolkit, with the right mentality to attack new problems, new challenges, and a new belief in themselves and what they can do.
What we really need to do here is to show you ways that the inspiration can stay on forever and that your project can actually progress all the way through to success.
So this is in a nutshell what Regulate is, and actually it's taken it to the next level. And the outcomes are really amazing in terms of, so for example, the accelerator program funded by Takamul was initiated through that program. So the synergy, the outcomes, the interchange that we would have with the companies, it's really amazing. Here is, Drew is chasing me on time, so I want to close in a minute or two. here are some of the companies that we dealt with, and we're trying to build up on those companies. And actually, recently we had a discussion with Simon, and we're really looking forward to collaborate and export the program to different regions. And also, here is the revenue program and its derivatives, or the outcomes, that where we develop half-days or one-day program that is designed for the clients to be delivered at their premises. And in a nutshell, with the short period of time that we have done, this is the number of startups that we do have active, up to date. Those are the survived ones so far, and it's still, the number is growing. And we're trying to increase our impact in terms of the educational element that we're trying to do, but also our engagement with the corporate in different ways, not only to helping startups, but also helping the corporate themselves was really, really amazing, and we're going on that. So in April, we're running the 5th cohort for the program, and we try to increase our impact by engaging different activities, such as the MIT Enterprise Forum that we're actively engaged into it, and so on. So to conclude, what we're trying to do here at an emerging ecosystem in Saudi, we're aiming to have the outreach and impact, not only to the local economy, but also beyond that to the region and the globe, is we want to equip people with new eyes for seeing new lands and discovering new opportunities using the technologies that they do exist. We're not aimed to be a business school, and we don't have a business school in KAUST, but we look forward to create the highest impact with the Entrepreneurship Center being associated with a leading R&D university. With this, I conclude, and thank you. And I'm going to give it over to Dhruv.
Thank you, Hattan. This was a really, really good presentation, and thanks for that fantastic video. It really gives a sense of the program that you're running. With this said, I'm going to hand it over to Abdullah. And mind you, we're running a little bit late. As you can see, this is a very, very interesting and exciting topic. 1 hour just seems so short. Right, it seems we do not have Abdullah, and we do not have audio from him. So with that said, we're going to move on to asking some questions, open the floor to asking questions to Hattan and Simon, who are both with us. And I'm going to ask the most basic questions, Simon and Hattan, both to you. So you've done projects. You're running successful incubation programs, and you've done projects with corporates. What are some of the challenges that you faced? Could you point out maybe one or two in brief, the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
So I will just drill down the challenge that I think that SETSquared finds is providing the I guess the level of service that some corporates require. So if we're dealing in certain areas at, let's say, at the business unit level, quite rightly, the executive team at that business unit are very, very focused on quite near to market and quite specific technology innovations that they want to acquire and bring into their portfolio at the kind of speed that they dictate. And so they perhaps look at a university business incubator as a source of contracted R&D. And we have found that quite challenging. And although we have great candidate technologies with our startup companies, we probably didn't service those particular requests as well as we could. So that was a challenge. The way that we have got around that is actually to work, always choose to work at a corporate level, so above the business unit level, usually with a small number of executives who've got a view of the whole of the corporate's R&D and innovation needs, and actually invest more time in a smaller number of corporates as partners, trying to get under the skin what they're looking for and see how we can match make that with our venture companies. And I think sometimes the corporates find that a little frustrating that they need to go through so much detail. But we find that actually working with a small number of partners in more detail is much more fruitful in terms of the kind of connections that we can make with our ventures at the end. Also, the other last thing I'll say about that is creating long-term relationships. So rather than being kind of prodded by a corporate for a quick pitch, quick show and tell of a few of our companies, we kind of load the relationship with a bit more interaction with them at the beginning and insist that it's a multi-year relationship, which would perhaps have 3 or 4 showcases across that period. It allows us to give us the best opportunity to connect them up with the best of our ventures over that time period.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. Hattan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for us, I think changing the culture of risk averse, especially with large corporates. So we have really good established relationship through the industry engagement office with a wide range of industries and companies, whether they're national, global, we get and the government as well. But then when we try to pitch and penetrate the large corporates, especially the centralized ones, the bureaucratic ones, to deploy the new startup technologies, usually this is will be a challenge for us to and also to change their mindset and give them a little bit of a chance to deploy or pilot or test. So it's really hard to generalize, but the smaller companies, they will be easier to convince and they will be more progressive in terms of deploying new technologies. But the larger ones, it is quite challenging. And this is what the other program, Revelate, does, is try to really to change the culture and let them think in an innovative way and trust their abilities and the abilities of new companies and startups to be deployed at their premises and plants and their operations. And that is quite challenging. It is changing over time. We deal with it case by case basis, but it's a challenge that we are overcoming, hopefully.
Excellent. Talking of challenges and solutions, this is great. But when this collaboration, falls in place, and it really works, do you have cases to share? Maybe one of a great success story when this partnership, this collaboration really worked. Simon, you, Hattan, and Abdullah, if you have audio now, please feel free to jump in too.
I could talk about a startup that we had. It's actually founded by graduates of our electrical engineering department from one of the SETSquared universities. He founded a business called Green Running with we helped him to get seed funding for that. And what it does is monitor energy use in corporate situations, looking at the kind of signature of the power consumption and being able to identify the devices from it. So long story short, if you've left fridge door open, this device can see that it's a fridge by reading the power line and actually aggregate that data together. It's quite useful if you want to save the power bill on data centers or a chain of hotels, this kind of thing. And the business was making some progress in deploying the service. In fact, I know that they'd sold into a hotel in Saudi Arabia as well, Hattan. And this is good. But I guess the potential of the technology versus the amount of seed funding that went into it, which was relatively low, meant that most of the cash went on product research and development and not on building sales pipeline. So that it did move very slowly. We were able through a program to introduce green running to Centrica, which is an energy company in the UK. I think it's a pan-European one, and Centrica were introduced through a government-sponsored program. They were obliged under a taxation scheme in the UK to invest some of its profits, some of their huge usurious profits, in technology startups, and they have invested £750,000, which is a big deal, into green running. But why it's really added value is that because it was an investment, it was a partnership as well, i.e. the information and assets were being shared by Centrica to this relatively small startup company. They helped to organize the product so it could be implemented at the it's called a DNO, so within the electricity distribution network. So not at the end user, the hotel in the premises, the business premises, but actually in the network itself. There's a whole new area of application that green running had appreciated, but couldn't get the access to power distribution networks before then. So there was the money, that was very good, but the access to the DNOs through Centrica has really transformed the company's business model and its prospects. I mean, as that kind of level of solution going into power companies, the opportunity is significantly bigger. So I'd say that was a really good tick. It doesn't happen as frequently as straightforward VC equity investments or business angel equity investments in SETSquared company, but when this sort of thing does happen, it really it does transform the businesses.
Excellent, thank you, Simon. Hattan?
Yeah, in our case, we had really a nice example that we're proud of. It's basically water desalination technology using solar energy, and it has the ability to produce either desalinated water or chilled water, and we can mix between those. This is pure R&D project that started between KAUST and National University of Singapore, and they built the initial prototypes at the lab, and then they scaled it up within KAUST facilities and the research park, and it's been working out very well. And then we leverage our relationship with the industry through the industrial engagement program or office, and we convince Lafarge. It's called a software company, which is a joint venture between Lafarge and Al Khayyat Group, which is a local company, Al Khayyat, and basically they helped us to deploy the first industrial pilot, and now it is in the execution phase for the industrial pilot to use underground water to be desalinated. And this plant is really in rough conditions, so it's like 90 kilometers inland from the Red Sea, where the cement manufacturing facility is placed. So they're in desperate need for water, and they like the technology that we deploy, the technology that we developed here at KAUST. And this is like the final stage before scaling it up. And if it works in those hard conditions, where the technology will take off at different applications or different fields. And actually, this process not only helped to facilitate for the piloting, but also to raise capital for the deployment as well through a national agency. And that was a really great example, and it's still in progress, but we're really looking forward for the results that would come out of it and its survival for the real industrial pilot.
Excellent. Thank you, Hattan and Simon, for sharing those examples and sharing all that can be achieved with this collaboration. Guys, if you still have any more questions, feel free to send them in, even via email or on the chat, and we'll make sure that we get those to our speakers and they can respond to those questions. One thing is certain from all that we've heard, and we've been talking to incubators in so many countries, is that there is a natural win-win potential, a natural win-win partnership possible between incubator and collaboration, incubator and corporations, and this is the right moment, in a sense. There is so much interesting activity happening on the incubators, like Hattan and Simon spoke about, new products, new services, looking at the problems from new eyes, right? And that's where the incubators can be tremendously helpful. And we at UBI Global are actually sitting in a very interesting intersection, where we get to see all this happening and where we get to share all of this with you guys. So thank you again for participating. Thank you again to our speakers. That was really, really great. And we look forward for you guys to log into the second part of this webinar, which will happen next month, where we will bring out the corporate perspective. What are the challenges when in the collaboration, when it works? what can be achieved. And I think that's what we should look out for. Towards the end of the webinar, you will also receive a link to our upcoming summit that's happening in the month of June in Stockholm, in Sweden, where we will bring the top incubation programs from around the world, selected corporations and governments to Stockholm, Sweden, so you can all interact and learn more from each other. With that said, I'm going to say hasta luego from Barcelona, and I'm going to wish good night or good day to where you guys are. Take care. Bye.